Cut this sound down.
Hey everybody, this is Kelly Anderson, Biohacker Mom. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day today. So I am just absolutely thrilled to have my guest today, Mr. Wade Lightheart. Wade is a three-time bodybuilding champion in Canada. He also was in the Mr. Universe competition. What year was that? Well, actually, you went three times, right?
Twice to the World Championships and 3 national championships.
That's phenomenal. So his background is nutrition and optimizing health, mostly for athletes, but I think that you work with anyone. I think that from what I've seen of you, Wade, you're just so passionate. I just think you just have a huge heart for wanting to help people and wanting people to be healthy. And that's how I feel also. I think we have an epidemic out there right now, and people like you are really leading the way. And so kudos to you. I'm just really blessed and thankful to have you on my talk today. It really means a lot. So first off, anything that you would like to say before we get started?
Thank you for having me. And for the listeners, I hope that we can provide some insight and some clarity about where to allocate their time, their energy, and the money. I think one of the big challenges that people who are embarking on engaging in better health or improving their health or addressing maybe genetic or family predispositions is there seems to be so much conflicting information. What do I do next? Where do I spend my money? Everybody's telling me a different story. I'm confused, and that leads to a paralysis of activity or a sense of helplessness. And so I've spent my entire life since I was 15 searching out the pathways as well as the differentiation between what's right for what person at what time. And those are not generally addressed in the world of communication that most people will approach. And so everybody's right and everybody's wrong. So how do you get what's right for you? And I think we've crafted a way. In fact, my business partner and Matt Gallant, we're publishing a book. A major publishing house has signed us, gave us a really nice advance for our next book, which was going to eliminate all of that confusion in the future. But we can dive into some of those details today.
Most definitely. I'm very excited about that. I will be definitely one of the first people to, I'm such a book hoard. And as soon as a book comes out that I'm interested in, I've got it. The problem is I can't read quickly enough to get through them all, but I definitely.
Audiobooks are great. Audiobooks have cut in the time. I do a lot of them. I prefer to read, but I have the same issues that everybody else has. So I listen several hours a day throughout my day with information to keep abreast of development.
Most definitely. And it makes life interesting. It makes life so fun. Always looking for ways to fill your time. So first off, I just want to go back a little bit. And I want to talk just a little bit about your beginnings into this whole world of health. And I know that sisters had a very big part in this. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, when I was 15 years old, my older sister was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of cancer of the lymph nodes. And over the course of 4 years, I watched her go through the medical model before she died an early death at 22 years old. And a couple things came out of that. Number one, I recognized that your health and your life are not guarantees. And number two, in a naive kind of way, I felt that we didn't know what things that we could do. This is back in 1986 to 1990. So the availability of information was somewhat limited. The doctors gave you a proclamation, and it's very much like voodoo, and that's it. And there's nothing else, and anything outside of that isn't an option. And I can remember her getting sick on the way home from treatments. We'd have to stop maybe 5 or 6 times on the 55-mile drive home. She'd have to vomit. And I remember thinking to myself, well, it seems like the treatment is making her worse. If you want to be healthy, shouldn't you be doing things that make health? Now, I think that's a really, like I've come full circle on that. It's a naive thing, but sometimes asking the simple question is a real problem to people who have made a living out of complexities and compartmentalizations. And that when the danger of becoming an expert in a given area is, you know more and more about less and less. And I think, unfortunately, we have compartmentalized some of the world's best and brightest people in a way that has handicapped the individual in taking control of your health. And the reality is, every individual is in charge of their health, not your doctor, not your government, not your family members, not your kids. You have to determine that your health is your responsibility, nobody else's. So no blames, no excuses, but that means you have to get clear on some basic premises. And what are those? And then you got to implement them. And if you can't, as I hear, I don't have time to do this. Well, guess what? Then you're done before it starts. You will experience a painful, unfortunate, premature demise. And all of the literature demonstrates that. So the question is, it's not that you don't have time, is that you haven't prioritized your life properly. And that's tough talk. But if you don't have tough questions early, you get tough responses later on. And it's way harder to climb your way out of illness than it is to prevent it. And so we are on the preventive side of things and have been my whole life. And we've had tremendous results across that. And to that goal, we help provide both information and clarity about how people can direct that. And we'll give people a systematized approach for people as listening to this phone call that can get it for free, which is my whole system on how do they determine that for themselves.
So my grandmother passed away of lymphoma also when I was 12. And I watched the exact same thing for 2 years. 2 to 3 years, I watched her go from a normal person with a diagnosis to basically a complete invalid. I watched her so just completely sick. And then the outcome was just like your sister's outcome. And I think that, just like you, I think that had a very big impact on my life. And I think that was part of the impetus for me as well to say, because I just remember my grandmother just weekly, all these doctors, just constant. And I think that I realized we've got to take a handle on this ourselves. So I completely understand and completely empathize. And a lot of times it's pain that something really incredible and beautiful comes out of that. And I think what you have created is incredible. You have now a supplement company that is at the forefront of what I call the biohacking industry. You're leading the way. And so first off, before we get into talking about your company and what you offer, there's so many people out there. The biohacking world, I would say it's been around a long time, but it's really, the spotlight is showing on the biohacking industry now. And so for the common man out there, I get asked this question all the time. This is yours and my industry. How do you explain biohacking to people?
Great question. And I would suggest that one of the reasons we call our company BiOptimizers is I believe in biological optimization, not necessarily hacking. Hacking was a terminology that was developed by Dave Asprey, who is a leader inside of the field, that was talking about using various technology, information, nutritional, I would say, strategies that would produce a desired result over and above maybe what was happening. So he became famous because he was 300 pounds in the tech Silicon Valley, and he found a way to lose a bunch of weight eating chocolate, fat, and butter. And those he called hacks because that was relative to language of, tech companies. And so that gave rise to a whole bunch of things that could help you overcome predisposed genetic issues. But I would say that biohacking originated a little bit earlier, or specifically in the bodybuilding community, which I'm from. And so, and I'm going to get to the definition because I think it's really important to understand the development of this, where we are and where we're going. So in the bodybuilding world, you're doing two things that are against your evolution. And every woman is interested in these two things, by the way, just so you know. And they think, well, I'm not a bodybuilder. Yes, but you do suffer from these genetic things, which is impacting how you feel about yourself, how you look in life, and your long-term health. And that is, we have a predisposition to eat more than we need in order to preserve ourselves, to build up body fat stores over time to overcome famine. That's a genetic evolutionary advantage. If you could store body fat better than other people, other humans, you had an increased chance of survival. The second thing is if you have less muscle mass, you require less calories. So when you start dieting, if you don't do it properly, which almost everybody in America has been on a diet, what happens is you lose muscle mass, which affects your metabolism. And you increase your propensity to store more body fat. You're in this starvation mode. So your body has these evolutionary biases to do this. The entire dieting industry has been built on this. Now, bodybuilders figured out how to overcome, to offset, to hack against those two things. In other words, they grow a disproportionate amount of muscle than other people, and they get disproportionate leaner than, say, might be even healthy. It's a cosmetic sport, essentially. So in order to do that, they had to develop all these methodologies, hacks, if you will, in order to figure that out. Now, unfortunately, 50, 60 years down the road from that, the problem was the hacks got more and more aggressive, and that started compromising the health of bodybuilders per se. And so you have this intersection of maybe people who are in their middle age that have disproportionate amount of money. They want to spend on it to look their good and be good. They're jumping into hacks and spending whatever amount of disposable income they have in that route. And it can be a little bit to a lot. And then you have people on the other end, these younger bodybuilder types who are spending the same amount to get a performance result, and they're dying early. Okay. So where's the bottom line? Well, the bottom line is you want to find a way to optimize your own body's strengths and to offset against its weakness. That could be clearing metabolic pathways. That could be propensity to downregulate metabolism. It could be hormone dysregulation. It could be neurotransmitter optimization because you don't produce this neurotransmitter, which affects how much anxiety you feel. Okay, so now in the world of biohacking is individuals don't necessarily have to rely on data from an externalized source which hasn't been tested for genetic individuality. You can actually get devices and gauges and tests to be able to determine what's right for you. And this is where is so exciting about the field and why BiOptimizers has emerged as one of the premier companies. And it happened organically. Matt, my business partner, has the genetics that does well on a high-fat ketogenic diet. Okay? Can't handle carbs, doesn't like that, does well with fats, a little bit of proteins, that sort of stuff. I do terrible on that diet. That diet will kill me. I feel lousy on it. I'm pounding like 65, 75% carbs, almost no fat, relatively high protein. I'm on a plant-based diet. He's on a, almost a carnivore diet. How could two guys run the same company and have completely opposite profiles? It's because we understand that we gauge for individuality. He needs a certain set of supplements to offset his limitations that he's inherited in his life or how his body clears toxins. I have a different set of supplements. The one thing that we both agreed on is that if you don't get your digestion figured out, and almost everybody in the modern world has compromised digestion, whatever you're doing is not going to be delivered to the cells where it needs. So we broke down, first we had to fix my digestion originally, and then his. And then we developed the whole digestive products. Then we got into the nervous system, and then we got into brain optimization and all of these wonderful things that they call, quote unquote, biohacking. So that was a long approach, but I wanted to clarify that for people because you get into it and it sounds like techie or that's not for me. But in actuality, it is about determining what individually will give you the most value for the dollars you're spending. And that's going to be different between, say, you and your spouse, you and your kids, you and your friends.
Yes, definitely. And I love that approach. I think for a lot of people, even me as a biohacker trying to research, there are just so many rules of thought. So I can see how just people in the general public, how they can get easily overwhelmed. So say someone comes to your site.
Yeah.
What is do you have a procedure to simplify this for people?
Sure. Well, it depends. And I would, without giving too much away, there's two different aspects of how we address sites. So depending on, we have tens of thousands of web pages, which are geared towards different, what we call avatars, a person who's on a ketogenic diet, a person on a plant-based diet, a person that's looking for cognitive enhancement, a person that's having difference on sleep profiles. And so we categorize things by what's the main problem and then providing solutions relative to that problem. On an individual basis for elite aspects, or what we call our bio tribe, we get into the deeps, and I'll identify this, and I will refer individuals who want to listen to this on my podcast, number 25 on the Awesome Health podcast. There's 5 or 6 basic tests that a person wants to take in order to determine their pathway forward and how they look at information ongoing to optimize this. And it's going to cost you a bit of money at the first hand, but it's going to save you so much time and money and keep you from making all the mistakes that we've had to make over the last 20, 30 years. Right? I didn't get here through great testing. I got through a lot of trial and error, and then testing emerged. So we're at a unique time that you can order a genetic test. I think everybody needs to get a genetic test. Go to the DNA company, get one of those. They'll give you a profile. They'll show you what things that you're predisposed for, what things you're not. I think everybody should get a hormone test, like a Dutch test, so you can look at where your hormones are. So where you are on that scale based on your predispositions. Okay. You want to get a pulse test, which is folded proteins, which determines how deeply you might be towards heart disease. A HOMO-IR test, which is a blood glucose insulin response test, blood sugar. Okay. And then, and the reason why I'm telling you these tests, because these are the things that kill people: heart disease, right? Diabetes. These are the big killers that are cancers. And, that's oftentimes related to sugar and toxicity. So you would look at also doing a gut map, looking at how your gut is operating. So there's various different biome tests and gut map tests that you can get these ordered by a naturopathic doctor. And a SpectraCell test. A SpectraCell test is the state-of-the-art test where you'll look at your blood, not just what vitamins and minerals are in your blood, but what's actually getting into the cells. And then if you're in based on all that information, you might find that you're in a highly toxic environment. So you might need something like a Great Plains toxicity test. So a lot of people, for example, in around agriculture or around chemical plants or in highly concentrated cities might find that they're very high in heavy metals, which could be throwing off a lot of other things. In other words, maybe they don't detoxify that well. Maybe they've got high levels of aluminum or mercury, which is disrupting either cognitive function or maybe their hormones or things like that. So once you have that chain of information, and of course you can do a DEXA scan. A DEXA scan will measure your lean body mass, your body fat, and your bone density, as well as where they're distributed in the body. And so that's going to give you a basic, so you can say, okay, I need to have this much muscle mass, this much body fat, this much bone mass, right? And I can craft an exercise routine that's around that. I can pick a diet that's based on my genetics. I can look at my hormones and optimize my hormones to the right supplementation. I can make sure I got my detoxification pathways down, and I can offset any genetic risks that my family might have, so that if I'm going to purchase supplements, I'm going to purchase the right supplements that are right for me. I don't need to purchase the supplements right for my spouse or for my kid. I need what's right for me. And then oftentimes you'll start to see patterns, especially if like a husband and wife does this. So the husband and wife will do genetic tests, and they'll be oftentimes very different. They're like, oh, now I see why we're different, and how you process emotions or how you process thinking. And then you go, oh, well, one of my kids is more like me, and one of them is like, well, guess what? It's going to show up in your genetics. It's going to show up in your hormone test. It's going to show up in how you metabolize toxins. And then you're like, oh, this is biohacking. And now you implement the things to offset or to adjust your lifestyle. And you know what the end result is? You get to your results way faster. You get there way easier, and you feel better along the way because you're operating within the parameters of the system that you have. That's what I think biological optimization is, and that allows you to live long and allows you to live strong.
Yes, but I'm thinking of the general public, or a lot of people out there who might have just listened to what you just said, and they're like, that's still too much.
Right. You know? So on that, so to that note, that's why I created on my course the 84 steps. It's a 12-week course where I break down in what I call the awesome health formula, which is a universal applicable methodology that without any testing at all, you're going to end up producing a better result. And inside of it, I use an acronym. And so people can write this acronym down. It's called AWESOME is the acronym. It's easy to remember, right? You feel awesome, look awesome, you are awesome. Okay, first thing you start with, air. Second thing, water. Third thing's exercise. These three things in the modern world are absolutely non-negotiable. There are no people who are experiencing extraordinary levels of health, good levels of health, or even okay levels of health if they don't have those three things figured out. If you are spending your money on supplements or crazy things or whatever, or you're trying to do an exercise routine that's very difficult for you to do on a day-to-day basis, you're kidding yourself. Forget it. Go back to the basics. Deep breathing. Practice a deep breathing practice. It could be Qigong, could be meditation, could be breath work. You can go to a clinical breathing person, learn how to nose breathe, learn how to do different breaths to calm yourself down from anxious states or stress response, to increase energy and vitality. It's very simple. It doesn't cost that much money. Okay. Water. You need adequate, proper hydration, right? You need good quality water, and you need lots of it. Not sodas, not sports drinks, not, teas and coffees and this stuff. Those are all treats. Water is what you're mostly bag of water. And then exercise. We are prisoners of technological innovation. In other words, technology has made our lives so easy, it's actually become something that's killing us. Our bodies are designed to move, they're designed to work, they're designed to, living is what ran our bodies. And if you go back and look at black and white photos from your grandparents' age, great-grandparents' age, there's very few out of shape, obese people. Why? They ate real food, and they had to do a lot. You had to walk a lot, had to move a lot, had to lift a lot, had to do all these things. You didn't have to exercise because life was exercise. But now life isn't exercise. So not accounting for that is a it's a huge error that people make, because the body works on efficiencies, but those efficiencies have been leveraged against us through the preservation of energetic systems. Is, oh, I'll just have a remote TV. I don't have to actually experience life. I can voyeuristically do it on television or my computer or my phone. And all of a sudden we run into all the complications of that. And the data is in evidence about that.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. And it's really like on my show, I'm always just totally preaching it. And I fall victim to it as well. None of us are completely immune unless you go completely off the grid. And I'm never saying, oh, I'm this holier than thou person, but it is something that we all should be aware of and be trying to, at least watch the amount of time that we're exposed to all of this stuff.
This stuff is extremely addictive. So it's the equivalent from an addiction factor of cocaine, heroin, or alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Super addictive. And so we didn't learn how to manage technology. And so we're all victims of it, and we're all victors of it. The question is finding that balance. And that might take us a few generations to figure out.
Yeah, I do think that we will find it. It may be that we are forced to find it. It may just come to a point where humanity. Yeah, I always think of the movie Idiocracy.
Yeah, it's a great one.
It's a great movie, and it's so true. And that was foretelling all of this basically. And every day I'm like, so it's happening. It's happening.
Watering the plants with sports drinks.
So speaking of water, because I did want to get into that, I know that you and I are very passionate about the same water. Tell me a little bit about our water, your perspective on it, and why you love this water so much.
Well, I want to, before I go into that, I want to end the water argument for people. Water, Dr. Pollack, who wrote the book Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life, discovered something revolutionary, that water has a fourth phase. So it exists as both a solid, a liquid, a gas, and a crystal. And so the water also has, and if you can watch the documentary Water, the Great Mystery, the top water researchers in the world of studying water, they determined that water has about 440,000 information panels of storage. So the reason you can remember where your keys are and where your address is and how to tie your shoes is because of the storage capacity of water. Now, if you go to any kind of discussion on water, you are all going to see all of these competing ideas of what's good water. Is it reverse osmosis water? Is it bottled water? Is it spring water? Is it ionized water? Is it ultraviolet water? Is it, a frequency infused water? Is it whatever, carbonated water? Or like, so there's all of these people are somewhat right and somewhat wrong in that they have a way of implementing on water. And so what I would like people to consider water as a storage mechanism, like a DVD or a hard drive. Now, I'll use a DVD because it plays a movie, and we've all watched movies. So if I store on that movie a history movie, I can learn about history. I can learn about a sports team. I could have a sports movie. I could have a documentary about virtually anything, science. I could put a horror film on this. I could put a drama on this. I could put a comedy on this. So basically, I am putting information onto this DVD, and it plays a certain movie. It shares that information within my body. Okay, water works the same way, and that what you do to it gives it the information that it is going to exchange with your body. And if you understand that, then you can stop ending all of the arguments about what's the best water. Now, So first, I would say it's a good idea to drink more water. Second, if water is a storage device, how I store it is going to be, it's a major soluble. So if I store it in a plastic bottle versus a glass bottle, it's going to be a very big difference because the plastic is going to leach into the water. The glass won't. Okay, so the storage mechanism that you keep your water in is a big deal. Second, does it need to be filtered? Okay, well, if you filter your water, how do you filter it? Is it a membrane filter that takes everything out of it and changes the osmotic pressure? Because water inside your stomach isn't as good as water inside your cells. You need to get the water from your stomach when you drink it into your cells. This is related to osmotic pressure. Second, water has a charge. Is it positively charged? Is it negatively charged? Whether it's positively or negatively charged determines if it does damage to your tissues or has ability to reduce damage of your tissues. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So what are the big drivers of water? I would say how absorbable how clean it is, how absorbable it is, and what's its charge. And those three things are best addressed, in my opinion, by water ionizers. A high quality water ionizer with a good filtration system before it, because the quality of your water going in determines the quality of the water going out. So you want water that is mineral rich, devoid of chemical agents. You want it to have a negative charge, and you want it to have a low osmotic pressure so that it's absorbed by your body relatively easy. The cells, in other words, it goes into your cells because your cells operate at 80 dynes, and anything over 80 is not good. So most bottled water, for example, is over 80 dynes. So I want fresh, I want ionized, I want clean water with lots of minerals. Well, an ionizer achieves all of those goals in a very simple manner. Not to discount everything else that everybody else is doing. Okay, they got their methodology. But when I look at how much water can I get into my cells where I need it, there's nothing superior to that. And on the backside, I get unlimited antioxidants when I use electrolysis. Well, what's an electrical-based antioxidant? Well, that removes these free radicals that do all the damage to all the tissues in the body. If I can get that from my water, well, guess what? That will offset many of the challenges that life gives, whether I'm breathing a lot of toxins, whether I don't have the perfect diet, whether I am predisposed to damage or detoxification pathways aren't working well. Ionized water addresses a lot of those issues in a great way. I'm not saying that you should do that as a, quote, do all the wrong things, but it can often reduce the effects of that and moves people from disempowered to empowered about their health. And I've seen that tens of thousands of times over the last 15 years. And that's why I'm a big advocate of ionized water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. And you feel better. For me, it tastes better, and you just feel better because it is doing all of that. Mm-hmm. My daughter went away to camp last week, and she didn't have the water for a week. And when she came back, she was like, "Oh, it's so bad not having the water. It's so bad." And once you drink it, you have to experience it to really understand the difference. And mm-hmm. So I do agree with you on that. I want to get back to your course that you have. The 84 steps.
84 days. Yep. Awesome.
Got the acronym AWESOME. Tell me what the other. So we've got air, water, exercise, sleep.
Actually sunlight.
Sunlight. Okay.
Now, sleep actually fits within that parameter. So if you look at it, we live in a solar system. And a solar system means that everything that we see is actually a vibration. There's no solids, there's no liquids, there's gas. There's only one determinant, is how quickly something's vibrating to determine. If it vibrates really fast, we don't see it. If it vibrates really slow, it's very dense. And everything else fits in between that. So we are essentially in a giant electromagnetic screen that we call life. Like this table is mostly empty space. But if I hit it, it feels rough, right? It's kind of fascinating when you get into physics. We also, because we're in a solar system, we run on a circadian rhythm. That circadian rhythm influences our sleep. And so our diet is related to vibratory energy. So that's what, and we notice this with people. They're light, they're bright, they're happy, they're dark, they're sombra, they're not healthy. Why do we actually have this built into our language? Well, because we actually recognize it, that we're all part of this system solar. It's permeates every aspect of our consciousness. Then we go from, that's the S. So, and then from there we go into optimizers. What are optimizers? Optimizers are the elements that I've ascertained over the last 30 years, 35, oh my God, 35 years. Anyways, that optimize the cellular function in the body. So we're made up of all these cells, and I think that's the single unit that we can determine that creates all the different types of organs. It's the most common single unit element of the body. So if I can make the individual cells healthier, if I can optimize those, the chance that I have health throughout the system is very high. So what does a cell need? It needs enzymes, it needs probiotics, it needs essential minerals, essential vitamins, essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, and then herbs, various herbs in the body. They move energy either that's too much or too little in the electrical meridians inside the body that operate. So there is a balance between the chemical model that we talk about in the West and the electrical model, which they talk about in the East. We are bioelectric. It's a combination of the two. And instead of dividing them into camps, we can recognize they work interactively between each other. Now, the next thing on the awesome formula is mental beliefs and attitudes. We probably could have put that first. It's really hard.
I would say that's my number one.
But it'd be MASO, and we wouldn't have a very good acronym. Mental beliefs and attitudes are a combination of inherited patterns from the environment that we grew up with, as well as our intentions and affirmations that we use to either enhance or overcome those previous limitations. This is something that is pliable and doable no matter where you come from. That's why we celebrate the hero's journey. The hero's journey is someone comes from a disadvantaged situation, has a bunch of challenges, usually some sort of crisis, and overcomes that crisis and then comes back to the village and shares the value. That's the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and it's built into the human condition. So if you do not consciously adapt a mental belief system that supports your health or whatever endeavor you're going to, you are going to get its opposite, and you're going to feel like a victim. Becoming a victim is easy and in vogue today. Don't fall for it. It's a trap that leads you to a negative outcome in human life. Quality of life, happiness, joy, health, all that will erode into just tragedy. Human condition is tragic enough. You want to celebrate it on the way. So in adopting a mental belief attitude process, like an exercise process, is very important. And then finally, education, testing, and coaching. Well, etc. at the end. Well, what is that? If you look at the root word of education, it is educe. And educe is to learn from within. And how we learn, even from small children all the way up to the most sophisticated scientists in the world, is to run tests. You run a test, you see if that test works or if you're improving. So for example, it could be, can I walk up the stairs today without any pain? Can I run a race? Can I do some walks? How do I feel with this food or that food? All the way up to these sophisticated DNA, blood tests, hormone tests. All those are tests. And then we determine, what does the test tell us? And then we take a course of action to see if we can optimize the results that we get from that test. Now, that's where coaching comes in. We live in a very complex world, and it's changing rapidly, and nobody has enough time. So it makes a lot more sense to invest a little bit time into someone who is experienced in helping people in your situation go to the situation you desire. They're producing that result regularly and systematically. Well, the chances are, if you follow a process that they've engaged with you, you're going to get there a lot faster than try to figure it out on your own. In fact, you could make fatal decisions on your process without coaching. So to me, in a highly complex, changing world, Coaches are the fastest way to get to where you want to go. They hold you accountable. They give you insights because of experience with many, many people just like yourself who they've solved that problem and can save you so much time, so much effort, so much money. So there's an opportunity cost to life because your most precious resource is not your health. It's actually your time because it is an absolute finite thing. Now, health will prolong your capability to do the most out of that time. But again, every day that goes by is a day closer to the end. And so you can't get that time back. You can get your health back. You can't get your time back. And they are intrinsically related. So that's the awesome formula. And so what I do is I walk people through a 12-week course. It's 5 to 7, 8 minutes, most of the videos to up. There's a couple that are 15. And that walks you systematically through, hey, where do I spend my money? How do we do a deep breathing practice? Where do I look for water? Where do I get these tests? What kind of exercise is right for me? All this sort of stuff. I've laid it all out after coaching tens of thousands of people around the world. I created a systematized approach that anybody can use, and I give it away for free from our site. So everybody can get it for free. It's my gift to everybody because I had all these questions myself on my journey, and I wanted just to answer them for other people, and we've done that.
So it's an automated thing.
That's right. So when they go to BiOptimizers.com, they go to the 84 days, the Awesome Health course, whatever. Click on that, and I am going to walk you step by step, video by video, and you can go to the site and cut the line. And I'm really interested in enzymes today. I'm really interested in this water. I'm really interested in this type of exercise, the most efficient way to do it. And you can do that, or you can go through it sequentially as it was designed. It's your choice.
Well, it sounds fascinating. I'm going to do it. I'm definitely going to go through it. I'm very curious and very interested. So your book, you said that you would kind of give us a few little inklings of what you're going to be sharing in the book. Is it basically going to be what we've just discussed, or will you have anything outside of this new and exciting?
Yes. This book, we believe, is the grand universal theory of dietary practice and how to optimize it specifically for yourself. Sequentially, in fact, we had a bidding war between the publishing houses. They were impressed with the data. I'm not saying that to brag. It's really a result of, Matt and I being experts in our field and being in opposition for probably 10 years of our business relationship. And our desire to find the truth. And what we found is there was a middle ground between that. And there's a reason why diets are successful for some people and a failure for others. There's a reason why some supplements work for some people and not for others. And this bias has not been accounted for in virtually all periodical research. They haven't accounted for genetic individuality. And if you haven't accounted for genetic individuality, the test results out of a double-blind study could be flawed just by the sample size of people because you weren't testing for very specific things. I'll give you an example. If there was a whole bunch of people who were predisposed to a ketogenic diet and you gave them a supplement that amplified the pathways to, produce relatively ketogenic diet, that would look great. And if you applied that to a same sample size that were mostly like myself, that are carbohydrate-based or plant-based, the result of that supplement might be the exact opposite result of the others. And you see this in the scientific literature. This is the first time I went to university and I saw a comparison analysis between different vitamins and stuff. I'm like, who's right? Well, the problem is they weren't accounting for all this. And the good news is biohacking has kind of usurped the double-blind study by actually giving you data that now you can correlate with which double-blind studies are going to be appropriate for you. And that's a game changer. And that's why so many people at the highest ends of health, whether it's athletic performance, executive performance, or lifestyle performance, are producing extraordinary results right now because they've accounted for these individual variances, and the general practitioners of the world have not.
Yeah, I I mean, it is very interesting, and I'll say I'm at fault of this too. You know, sometimes I even want a one size fits all for everyone. And I know there are a lot of biohackers out there who are just like, just give me, just give me the answer, just give, and they want kind of a generalized answer for everything.
They
And
want a magic bullet.
a magic bullet.
Right. People want the one thing. We've got into this hypnotization in advertising that if you just do this one thing, your life is going to be better. And that goes back to a story I learned as a little boy from my mom. And it was a story that I used to love, and it's called Jack and the Beanstalk and the Magic Beans. And where did it lead him to? He sold the family cow for the magic beans and got beat up by giants. Listen, the giants out there are big pharma, big government, and big agriculture. And those giants are selling you magic beans, just like they did to Jack and the Beanstalk. And if you get them, you get smashed by the giant. Don't buy the beans. Don't buy or sell the family cow. Learn how to take those beans, put them in your garden, harvest what you have, and you'll live a much happier life than if you try and go for the magic beans.
I agree. I'm going to take this one step further, though, Wade, because I know this is also an area that you have a lot of interest, and I think that you're passionate about this. And it's really something that we talk about all of this information, giving out all of this information, all the tests and all these things you can try, and looking at heredity and all of this. And there's definitely value to all of it. But one thing that I really try to convey with my people is at some point, we have to learn that there is a higher power that we're all connected to. And there's a great deal of power in learning to connect to that and listen to that and listen to our own bodies. And I particularly think that that is actually a big part of biohacking as well, is that intuitive condition or ability to actually listen to what our bodies need. I know you're a big meditator, and I know that you understand that connection, that energetic connection of all of us to each other, of us to a larger force. We don't have a whole lot of time here, but what are your thoughts on that in connection to biohacking? Because personally, I think it's kind of a big thing.
It's a great question. And I'll pre-qualify a couple things. I've been blessed with a life where I don't have to operate on in that area from a position of faith. I'm able to operate from a position of experience, and so that in itself is a certain bias. That when you don't have to operate from a position of faith, then it gives you a much more greater sense of connection and confidence in that which we can't see, maybe influencing us more than that which we can. That being said, inside of that, we can all cultivate an aspect of faith. We all live on a form of faith. Faith in the government, faith in my own decision-making process, faith that someone's not going to swerve into traffic while you're driving down the road, faith in science. So people say, not having a faith-based life, I don't have a faith-based life. Well, yes, you do. You just haven't determined the faith that you believe in. That's all. Now, the question is, most of the industries of man's faith, mankind's faith, are limited by the knowledge, awareness, and motives of the people who created those systems. The pursuit for spirituality has been advocated by virtually every culture in the world. Now, there are different types of cultures. And I'm a student of philosophy. I'm a student of religion. I'm a student of spirituality, science, psychology, sociology, nutrition. What just makes this whole thing up? And what I have found is that cultures who build their foundation of belief on an ideal, some sort of spiritual doctrine, some people call it a religious doctrine, and we can get into that in a minute, exist much longer than cultures who don't. So in many of the principles of the great religions are actually universally applicable. Their stories, the legends, some might say the myths, are illustrating a set of foundational principles that have been passed on generation by generation for thousands and thousands of years that lead to a harmonious life for the most part. So what I did is I looked at all these different philosophies and I incorporated them into a set of policies that I aspire to go to. And I say aspirational. It's not always that I'm able to live up to them, but I aspire to them. And the way that I measure that is by setting the intention in the morning, by quieting myself in a deep breathing practice, meditating and setting these intentions. And at the end of the day, stepping aside, taking that pause and reflecting upon that day to see how closely to my ideals that I lived up to. So to me, that is the practical aspects of spiritual application, which is essentially running a test on your life by time-proven ideals advocated through traditions that have allowed cultures to exist for thousands of years, and honestly assessing yourself at the end of the day of how well I did in going for that. And by continually forgiving oneself for their mistakes and, putting your best foot forward to those things that you aspire to become. And everybody that I have seen who does that on a consistent basis without judgment or condemnation of other people where they might find on that process treads the sure path to happiness and joy and ultimately to peace. And I think that's an aspirational goal for everybody. And I call that, that's my process around that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that is, I think is an important aspect of health and longevity. And I think that it's something in our fast-paced technological society, it's slowly being pushed aside. So I'm always
Dire consequences.
The what
with dire consequences.
Yes.
And that was predicted by Friedrich Nietzsche and Dostoevsky in the turn of this, in the late 1800s. They predicted that as we moved away from deification of human existence, that we would enter into the age that we're in. And that has horrific consequences for all of us involved. And so I think we're going to reverse the course over the next period of time, but it's probably going to be painful. Nature's lessons tend to be very painful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Well, Wade, this has been amazing. It has really been fascinating. I'm so interested in your 84 steps.
Yes.
I'm gonna take the time to do that myself. I wrote down several of the tests that you suggest. I'm going to put them in the comments if anyone's interested in checking in on those. And I'll also put your website in the comments. Anything else you would like to add at all? Do we know the name of your book? What's your book going to be called?
I can't reveal any of that. I'm under NDAs on that, but they can, they'll be offered when they go to our site. Also, we have called the Blueprint for Biological Optimization for people who are down the hacking route, really want to go deep. So I give away the course. We have a lot of product offerings. By the way, we give 100% guarantee on anything else. The course is free. It's yours to take and to use. It's basically a way that I was able to coach a lot of people. I just don't have the time to deal with people individually like I used to. So I synthesize a bunch of ideas that would get people to a really good state of health. And by that time, they're going to probably invest more because there's nothing that feeling good or feeling better isn't worth it. Really, like, and I just continue to feel better. I'm now 50, and you know, I'm hitting the gym. I'm running a company. I feel great. I don't need a lot of sleep, and I feel really blessed. And given the genetics that I was handed, that's an accomplishment in itself. And so I would encourage anybody listening. Look, where you is where you is, but where you are going is up to you. But you got to make the choice, you got to make the change, and you got to stick with it long enough that you get the results, and you will. Your human body is designed to work perfectly. Just give it the tools, give it the time. It'll happen.
Well, Wade, thank you so much. I'm just hugely appreciative that you came and spoke with us today. It really, really means a lot. I just really admire you so much, fellow biohacker and water snob. So thank you. Please come back again sometime, maybe when your book comes out. Let's try to have you come back on. I know that you do these all the time, but I'd love to have you come back on.
Sounds good, Kelly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wade. Everybody, thank you guys so much for coming on and watching. Keep biohacking, stay positive, and we'll see you next time.